The desert planet of 7 had 2 suns. Both of them burned without mercy. During the day, nothing moved on the red sand. Even the rocks seemed to hide from the heat. Only at night did the world come alive, when the cold winds blew across the empty land. Sung lived alone at the edge of this wasteland. His home was built into the side of a cliff, hidden behind rusty machines that pulled water from the air. He had lived here for 5 years, 5 years of silence, 5 years of peace, 5 years of trying to forget. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and hands that knew hard work. His face was weathered from the suns, and his eyes held a tiredness that sleep could not fix. Every morning he woke before dawn to check his water collectors. Every evening he ate alone and watched the sun set. It was a simple life, a quiet life, the kind of life a man chooses when he wants the universe to forget he exists. But the universe has a way of finding people who want to be forgotten. It was past midnight when the alarm woke him. Sung sat up in his bed, instantly alert. The proximity sensors had detected movement near the outer fence. He grabbed his old pistol from under his pillow and moved through the dark hallway without making a sound. Through the security screen, he saw 2 figures stumbling toward his gate. They moved slowly, like people who had walked too far and had nothing left. One was carrying the other. They fell twice before reaching the fence. Sung watched them for a long moment. Visitors were rare on 7. Visitors at night were even rarer. His instincts told him to stay inside, to wait until morning, to protect what was his and let the desert deal with strangers. But then he heard the cry, small, weak, the sound of a child. He was outside before he knew he had moved. The woman collapsed against the fence as he approached. She was not human. Her skin was pale blue, cracked and faded to a sickly. Along the sides of her neck, thin lines that looked like gills had gone dry and dark. Her silver eyes, beautiful and strange, looked up at him with desperate hope. In her arms she held a small girl. The child could not have been more than 4 years old. Her skin was the same blue, her features the same delicate shape. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow and weak. The woman tried to speak, but her voice came out as a dry whisper. She tried again. "Please," she managed. "Water, they hunt us." Sung did not ask questions. He opened the gate, lifted the child from her arms, and helped the woman to her feet. She weighed almost nothing. They were both dying from thirst. He brought them inside his home and laid the child on his bed. The woman fell to her knees beside her daughter, too weak to stand any longer. Sung moved quickly to his water storage. He filled 2 containers and brought them back. "Slowly," he warned. "If you drink too fast, you will get sick." The woman nodded. She poured water into her daughter's mouth first, drop by drop. Only after the child had swallowed several times did she drink herself. Her whole body shook as the liquid touched her lips. She made a sound that was half sob, half prayer. Sung watched them drink. The gills on the woman's neck slowly began to change color from dark to a lighter shade. He had heard of species like hers before. Water was not just something they needed to survive. It was part of who they were. Without it, they died slowly and painfully. The child opened her eyes. They were the same silver as her mother's, bright and innocent. She looked at Sung without fear. "Mama," she whispered, "water." "Yes, little one," the woman said, her voice stronger now. "We found water. We are safe." Sung said nothing. He went to prepare food and more water. When he returned, the woman had managed to sit up. She looked at him with gratitude so deep it made him uncomfortable. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for helping us." "Who are you?" Sung asked. "What are you running from?" The woman hesitated. Her arms tightened around her daughter. "My name is," she said. "This is my daughter. We are from the water world of 3 months ago. The iron tide came to our settlement." Sung's jaw tightened. He knew that name. Everyone in the outer systems knew that name. The Iron Tide was a bandit organization that controlled 3 star systems. They raided colonies, stole ships, and took slaves. No law could touch them. No government dared to challenge them. They took everyone, continued. Her voice was flat now, empty of emotion. This was how people spoke when they had suffered too much to feel any more. My husband tried to fight. They killed him in front of me. They took me, and because of what we are, can sense water underground. They wanted to use us to find water sources on dry planets. We were property to them, tools, nothing more. She paused and looked at her sleeping daughter. 1 week ago, the transport ship carrying us crashed on a moon near here. Many died. In the confusion, I took and ran. We stole a small shuttle and flew until the fuel ran out. Then we walked. For 3 days, we walked across this desert. I thought we would die. I prayed we would find help. And then I saw your lights. Sung listened in silence. When she finished, he asked only one question. Do they know where you are? Shook her head. I do not think so, but they will look. The iron tide does not let property escape. They will send hunters. She reached up and pulled the collar of her torn clothing to the side. On her shoulder was a brand burned into her blue skin. It was a symbol Sung recognized. The mark of the iron tide. The mark of ownership. Something cold moved through Sung's chest. He had seen that mark before on refugees and escaped slaves throughout the outer systems. He had always turned away. It was not his problem. He had left that life behind. But now, looking at the small child sleeping peacefully on his bed, he found that he could not turn away again. Saw something change in his eyes. We will leave, she said quickly. In the morning when we are stronger, I do not want to bring trouble to you. You have already done more than anyone else would do. No, Sung said. Looked at him with confusion. You can stay, he said, both of you, as long as you need. But the iron tide. Let me worry about the iron tide. His voice was calm and quiet. There was no anger in it, no fear, just a simple statement of fact. Stared at him, trying to understand this strange human who would risk his life for strangers. Why, she asked, why would you help us? Sung did not answer right away. He walked to the window and looked out at the dark desert. Somewhere out there, hunters were searching for this woman and her child. They would come eventually. He knew they would come. He touched his left arm, where beneath his sleeve an old tattoo was hidden. A tattoo from another life. A life of blood and fire and purpose. Because no one takes anyone from my house, he finally said. Not while I am still breathing. Did not understand what those words meant. She did not know who this man really was or what he was capable of. She only knew that for the first time in months, she felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt safe. Outside, the twin suns began to rise over the red desert. A new day was coming, and with it, the promise of violence. 3 days passed on the water farm. 3 days of rest and recovery. 3 days of peace that felt almost like a dream. Grew stronger with each hour. The color returned to her skin, changing from sickly back to its natural pale blue. The gills on her neck moved softly as she breathed, healthy and alive once more. She helped Sung with small tasks around the station, grateful for any way to repay his kindness. But it was Little who changed the most. On the first day, she had barely moved. She slept for hours, her small body recovering from the terrible journey across the desert. On the second day, she began to walk around the station, exploring every corner with curious silver eyes. By the third day, she was laughing. Sung heard the sound while working on one of his water collectors. He stopped and listened. It had been years since he had heard a child laugh. The sound was strange to him now, like music from a forgotten song. He found in the main room, playing with drops of water. She would let them fall from her fingertips and catch them before they hit the ground. Each drop made her giggle with delight. Water was sacred to the two. These simple drops were more precious than any toy. Stood nearby, watching her daughter with tears in her eyes. When she saw Sung, she quickly wiped her face. I am sorry, she said. It has been so long since I have seen her happy. I forgot what it looked like." Sung said nothing. He watched the child play, and something inside him, something he had buried deep, began to stir. He did not have words for what he felt. He only knew that he would not let anyone hurt this little girl. That night asked Sung to tell her a story. He sat beside her bed, uncomfortable and unsure. He did not know any stories for children. All the stories he knew were about war and death and things no child should hear. "Tell me about Earth," said. "Mama says humans come from a world covered in water." Sung almost smiled. "Not covered," he said. "But yes, Earth has a lot of water. Big oceans that stretch beyond what the eye can see, blue and green and full of life." "Have you seen it?" asked, her eyes wide. "Once, a long time ago." "Was it beautiful?" Sung thought about that question. He had visited Earth only briefly during his military training. He remembered the smell of the ocean, the sound of waves, the feeling of rain on his face. He had not thought about those things for many years. "Yes," he said finally, "it was beautiful." Smiled and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep. Sung watched her for a long moment before quietly leaving the room. Was waiting outside. "Thank you," she whispered. "She has not slept so peacefully in months." Sung nodded and walked toward his workshop. There was something he needed to do, something he had been putting off. He opened a hidden panel in the floor and looked at what was inside. His old combat armor, his weapons, the tools of a life he had tried to leave behind. He had not touched them in 5 years. He had hoped he would never touch them again. But hope was a luxury he could no longer afford. He closed the panel without taking anything out. Not yet. Maybe the iron tide would not find them. Maybe the hunters would search somewhere else. Maybe, just maybe, they could stay hidden. He should have known better. The next morning, the sensors detected a ship approaching from the east. Sung watched it on his screen, his face expressionless. It was a gunship, fast and heavily armed. The kind the iron tide used for raids and slave hunting. "Take to the shelter," he told. His voice was calm but left no room for argument. "There is a hidden room beneath the storage area. Stay there until I come for you." His face went pale. "They found us." "Maybe, maybe not, but I want you safe either way." "What about you?" "I will handle it." Grabbed his arm. "You cannot fight them alone. The iron tide has hundreds of warriors. They will kill you." Sung looked at her hand on his arm, then at her frightened face. "Go," he said gently. "Protect your daughter. Let me do the rest." Wanted to argue, but she saw something in his eyes that stopped her. Something hard and cold and certain. This was not a man who was afraid. This was a man who had faced death before and made it blink first. She gathered and disappeared into the hidden shelter. Sung walked outside to meet his visitors. The gunship landed in a cloud of red dust. 7 figures emerged. 6 were soldiers armed with rifles and blades, their faces hidden behind masks. The 7th was different. He was tall and broad, with dark green skin covered in scars. One of his eyes was missing, replaced by a glowing red implant. He wore the black uniform of an Iron Tide enforcer. His name was known throughout the outer systems. He was a hunter of escaped slaves, a killer of anyone who stood in his way. He had never failed to bring back his prey. Approached the gate with casual confidence. He had done this 100 times before. Farmers were easy. They begged, they cried, they gave up their secrets. None of them had the courage to resist. He stopped a few meters from where Sung stood. "Good morning, farmer," said. His voice was rough like broken stone. "We are looking for something that belongs to us, a female and her offspring. Our sensors show they came in this direction." Sung looked at the enforcer without expression. "I have not seen anyone." "Is that so?" smiled, showing teeth that had been filed to points. "Then you will not mind if we search your property." "I would mind." Smile faded slightly. This was not the reaction he expected. I do not think you understand your situation, human. Let us search, and maybe we let you keep your water. Maybe we even let you keep your life." "No." The word hung in the air like the sound of a blade being drawn. The soldiers behind shifted nervously. No one spoke to an iron-tied enforcer like that. No one refused them. Studied the human more carefully now. He had seemed ordinary at first. Dusty clothes, weathered face, the look of a man who had worked hard and lived harder. But there was something else. Something in the way he stood, something in the way he breathed. Had killed many people in his life. He knew what dangerous men looked like. And this farmer, this simple water collector, was looking at him without a trace of fear. "Who are you?" asked slowly. "I am just a farmer," Sung replied. "I grow water and mind my own business. I suggest you do the same. And if we do not, then you will regret it." Laughed, but the sound was hollow. His soldiers did not laugh at all. They were watching the human with growing unease. There was something wrong here, something they could not explain. "You are one man," said. "We are 7. We have weapons, armor, and a ship with enough firepower to turn this place to glass. What could you possibly do against us?" Sung did not answer. He simply looked at with those tired, empty eyes. And in that moment, the enforcer felt something he had not felt in many years. He felt afraid, but was too proud to show fear, too proud to walk away from a challenge. He drew his blade, a curved weapon designed for close combat. "Last chance, human," he growled. "Step aside or I will cut you down where you stand." Sung looked at the blade, then at the soldiers, then back at. "You should leave," he said quietly, "now while you still can." "Is that a threat?" "No, it is a warning, the only one you will get." The twin suns beat down on the red sand. The wind had stopped. Everything was still and silent, waiting for something to happen. Made his decision. He raised his blade and stepped forward. And Sung, for the first time in 5 years, prepared himself for war. Stopped mid-step. Something in the human's posture had changed. It was subtle, almost invisible. His weight shifted slightly. His shoulders relaxed. His hands, which had been hanging loose at his sides, moved a fraction of a centimeter apart. To most people, these movements meant nothing, but had spent his life fighting. He recognized combat readiness when he saw it. This farmer had just transformed from prey into predator in the space of a single heartbeat. "Wait," said to his soldiers. He lowered his blade slightly. "Who are you really?" Sung did not answer. Instead, he spoke in a voice that carried no emotion. "You have 60 seconds to get back in your ship and leave this planet. After that, I will assume you intend to do harm, and I will respond." "You are insane," said, but he did not move forward. "Do you know what the iron tide does to people who defy us? Do you know how many settlements we have burned? How many lives we have ended?" "I know exactly what you are," Sung replied. "I have seen your kind before, bullies who prey on the weak, cowards who travel in packs. You think numbers make you strong, but numbers only matter against people who are afraid. And you are not afraid." Sung's eyes met single remaining eye. "I stopped being afraid a long time ago." Felt the fear again, cold and sharp in his chest. But he could not back down, not in front of his soldiers, not when he had never failed a hunt. His pride would not allow it. "Kill him," he ordered. The soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, Sung moved. He dove behind a stack of metal containers, pulling a small device from his pocket. He pressed a button and the world exploded. Hidden charges, planted along the perimeter years ago, erupted in fire and thunder. 2 soldiers were thrown into the air by the blast. They did not get up. The others scattered, firing blindly at where they thought the human had gone. But Sung was no longer there. He moved through the smoke like a ghost, using the terrain he knew by heart. He had built this place. He knew every shadow, every hiding spot, every angle of attack. The soldiers were fighting on his ground now. and Sung had been trained to turn any ground into a killing field. As he moved through the chaos, his mind drifted back to another time, another life. The memories came unbidden, rising from the depths where he had tried to bury them. He remembered the day he joined the military. He was young then, barely 20 years old. Humanity had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. They were newcomers to a galaxy filled with ancient civilizations, powerful empires, and countless dangers. The alien races watched these small, fragile humans with curiosity and contempt. What could such weak creatures possibly offer? But humans had a gift that other species did not understand. They could adapt, they could endure, and when they fought for something they believed in, they became something terrifying. Sung had been selected for Reaper Company, an elite unit that handled missions too dangerous for regular soldiers. They trained him to fight in any environment, against any enemy, with any weapon or with none at all. They taught him to ignore pain, ignore fear, ignore everything except the objective. He was good at it, too good. He rose through the ranks quickly, becoming Sergeant Sung, one of the most decorated soldiers in the Republic. The other species began to notice. They saw what humans could do when pushed to their limits. They saw the fury that lived beneath the surface, the ancient instincts of a species that had clawed its way to the top of its food, chained through sheer will and violence. Some admired them, some feared them, but all of them learned to respect them. Sung remembered his final mission. They were sent to a colony called New Haven, which had been attacked by raiders. The main objective was to recover valuable military technology before the enemy could take it. The colonists, civilians caught in the crossfire, were secondary. But when Sung's squad reached the colony, they found a group of children hiding in a basement. 32 of them, the youngest only 3 years old. They were terrified, surrounded by fire and death, with no one to protect them. Command ordered Sung to continue to the objective. The technology was the priority. The children could wait for secondary rescue teams. Sung looked at those children, looked at their frightened faces, and made a choice. He disobeyed orders. He led his squad to evacuate the children first, carrying them through enemy fire to the extraction point. They saved every single one. But the delay cost them the technology. The raiders escaped with it. The mission was officially a failure. Sung was removed from active duty. His commanding officers called him emotional, undisciplined, unfit for service. They said he had let sentiment cloud his judgment. They said a good soldier would have followed orders. Maybe they were right. Maybe a good soldier would have left those children to die. But Sung knew he was not a good soldier. He was something else entirely. He was a protector, and protectors did not abandon the innocent, no matter what the orders said. He left the military and disappeared to the edge of known space. He found this empty planet, built his water farm, and tried to forget who he used to be. He told himself that chapter of his life was over, that he would never fight again, that he would live quietly and die quietly and leave no mark on the universe. But now, crouching in the smoke with the sounds of battle around him, he knew the truth. Some things could not be forgotten. Some parts of a person could not be buried. He was still Sergeant Sung. He was still a Reaper, and there were still people who needed his protection. The memories faded. Sung returned to the present. 3 more soldiers had fallen. They had underestimated him, moving in predictable patterns, relying on their numbers. But numbers meant nothing when you were fighting a man who had been trained to kill armies. Was screaming orders, trying to organize his remaining troops, but the soldiers were panicking now. They had expected an easy target. Instead, they had found a nightmare in human form. Sung appeared from the smoke behind one of the soldiers and struck. The man fell without a sound. Before the others could react, Sung had disappeared again, melting into the shadows like he had never been there. This was what humans could do. This was why the galaxy had learned to fear them, not because they were strong or fast or had special powers, But because when humans decided to protect something, they became relentless, unstoppable. They would die before they gave up, and they would take their enemies with them. Finally understood the terrible mistake he had made. He was not hunting escaped slaves anymore. He was fighting a demon in human skin. "Fall back," he shouted. "Get to the ship." But it was too late for that. Sung stood between them and the gunship now, a shadow against the flames. In his hand was a blade he had taken from one of the fallen soldiers. "You wanted to know who I am," Sung said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I am what happens when your kind threatens someone under my protection. I am the reason your masters should have taught you to fear humans." Looked at the human, at the bodies of his soldiers, at the burning remains of his perfect record. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to leave," Sung said. "Go back to your masters, tell them what happened here. Tell them that if they ever come back, if they ever threaten these people again, I will hunt them down, every single one. No matter how long it takes, no matter how far they run." Stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. He gathered his 2 surviving soldiers and walked back to the gunship. They flew away without looking back. Sung watched them go. Then he sat down in the red sand and let out a long breath. 5 years of peace, gone in a single morning. But looking toward the hidden shelter where and waited, he knew he would make the same choice again, 1,000 times over. Some things were worth fighting for. His report reached the Iron Tide Command within hours. 5 soldiers dead, an enforcer humiliated. A single human farmer had done what entire militias had failed to do. He had stood against the Iron Tide and lived. The warlords were furious. The Iron Tide ruled through fear. Their power came not from their ships or their weapons, but from the belief that resisting them was impossible. One man, one story of defiance could shatter that belief forever. The farmer had to die. His station had to burn. Everyone who knew what happened had to be silenced. They sent 20 warriors, the best hunters in the organization, men who had conquered planets and broken armies. They arrived on 7 days after his retreat, their ships blocking out the suns as they descended toward the water farm. Sung had used those 3 days well. He had sent into a deeper shelter, carved into the rock beneath the cliff. It was designed to survive anything short of orbital bombardment. They would be safe there, no matter what happened above. Then he had prepared the battlefield. He knew they would come with overwhelming force. That was how the Iron Tide operated. They did not take chances. They did not show mercy. They crushed opposition with such complete violence that no one would ever dare to oppose them again. But Sung understood something that the Iron Tide did not. Numbers were a disadvantage if you did not know how to use them. 20 warriors meant 20 targets, 20 people who could step on a trap, 20 bodies that could get in each other's way. In the tight spaces of the water station, in the narrow canyons of the cliffs, their strength became their weakness. And Sung intended to exploit every weakness. He had retrieved his old equipment from the hidden panel. The armor still fit, though it felt strange after so many years. The weapons were clean and ready, maintained out of habit even when he thought he would never use them again. He moved through the station like a man walking through a memory, remembering techniques and tactics he had tried to forget. By the time the Iron Tide ships landed, he was ready. The attack began at dawn. The warriors spread out in a wide formation, approaching the station from 3 directions. They moved with professional precision, covering each other, watching for threats. These were not common raiders. These were trained soldiers who had survived 100 battles. The first group to reach the outer perimeter triggered a pressure mine. The explosion killed 2 warriors instantly and wounded 3 more. The others dropped to the ground, scanning for the source of the attack. They saw nothing, only dust and silence. "Spread out," their commander ordered. "Find him." They moved forward carefully now, checking every shadow, every hiding spot. But Sung was not hiding in the shadows. He was above them, lying flat on a narrow ledge carved into the cliff face. He watched through the scope of his rifle as the warriors advanced. He fired 3 times, 3 warriors fell. By the time the others looked up, he was gone. This was how humans fought, not with honor or fairness, but with cunning and patience and ruthless efficiency. They studied their enemies, found their weaknesses, and exploited them without mercy. Other species called it cheating. Humans called it winning. The Iron-Tide warriors regrouped at the center of the station. They had lost 7 men in the first 10 minutes of the assault. 7 of their best, killed by a single enemy they had not even seen. Fear was starting to spread through their ranks. "He is just one man," the commander said, trying to restore order. "We have the numbers, we have the firepower. Push forward, find him and end this." They pushed forward, they found him. Sung appeared from behind the main water storage tank, moving faster than anyone expected. He had abandoned his rifle now, switching to close combat. In tight spaces, against multiple enemies, speed and precision mattered more than range. He hit the first warrior before the man could raise his weapon. The second managed to fire once, but the shot went wide as Sung ducked under his arm and struck his throat. The third drew a blade and swung. Sung caught his wrist, twisted, and used the warrior's own weapon against him. 3 more down, 10 seconds. The remaining warriors opened fire, but Sung was already moving, using their fallen comrades as cover, ducking through doorways and around corners. He knew this station like he knew his own heartbeat. Every pipe, every valve, every shadow belonged to him. A warrior cornered him in the maintenance corridor, or thought he did. Sung had planned for this. He triggered a steam vent filling the corridor with scalding vapor. The warrior screamed and stumbled backward. He did not get up. Another warrior tried to flank him through the storage area. Sung was waiting. They fought hand to hand in the darkness, 2 shadows struggling for survival. The warrior was strong, well-trained, experienced. But Sung was something more. He was human, and humans had been fighting for their lives since before they had names for the stars. The warrior fell. By midday, the battle was over. 18 warriors lay dead among the ruins of the outer station. Their commander and 1 other had survived only because Sung had allowed it. He needed someone to carry a message. He found them hiding in the shadow of their own ship, wounded and terrified. They looked up at him with the eyes of men who had seen a monster. Sung stood over them, covered in dust and blood. His armor was damaged in a dozen places. He had taken wounds that would have killed a lesser man, but he was still standing, still breathing, still fighting. "Go," he said. His voice was rough from exhaustion, but his eyes were clear. "Go back to your masters. Tell them what happened here. Tell them what you saw." The commander swallowed hard. "What are you?" "I am a human," Sung replied. "We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest but we have something your kind will never understand. When we love something, when we choose to protect something, we become unstoppable. We would rather die than surrender. We would burn the universe down before we let harm come to those we care about." He leaned closer, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "The woman and child you came for are mine now. My family, my people. If the iron tide touches them, if anyone touches them, I will come for you. Not just you, everyone. I will tear your organization apart piece by piece until there is nothing left but ashes and memory. Do you understand?" The commander nodded quickly. "Good, now run, and pray that I never see your face again." They ran. Their ship disappeared into the sky, leaving Sung alone among the bodies of his enemies. He stood there for a long moment, feeling the twin suns on his face, feeling the exhaustion finally beginning to take hold. He had won, but victory always came with a price. Then he heard a sound, small footsteps on the sand. He turned and saw climbing out of the shelter entrance. Was behind her, calling for her to stop, but the little girl ignored her mother. She ran across the battlefield without looking at the fallen warriors, her eyes fixed only on Sung. She stopped a few meters away from him. Her silver eyes were wide, taking in his wounds, his armor, the weapon in his hand. For a terrible moment, he thought she would be afraid of him. He thought she would see the killer instead of the farmer, but was braver than he knew. She walked forward and wrapped her small arms around his leg, holding tight. "You kept us safe," she said. Sung looked down at her. Then he dropped his weapon and knelt in the sand, letting the little girl hug him properly. His hands were shaking. His eyes were burning. But for the first time in years, he felt something that might have been peace. "Yeah," he whispered, "I did." Reached them and fell to her knees beside her daughter. She was crying, tears streaming down her blue face. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The three of them stayed there together as the suns moved across the sky, a human and two aliens, bound by something stronger than blood or species. Family. The story spread like fire across the outer systems. Within days, everyone had heard some version of it. A single human farmer had destroyed 20 iron-tide warriors. An entire hunting party, wiped out by one man defending 2 refugees. The details changed with each telling, growing larger and more impossible, but the core remained the same. Someone had stood against the iron tide, and won. The warlords met in their fortress on the dark moon of. They were angry, frightened, and uncertain. Their power had always rested on fear, on the belief that resistance was futile, that opposing them meant death. But now that belief was cracking. Slaves were starting to whisper. Colonies were starting to hope. If one man could defeat 20 warriors, what could 100 men do? 1,000. They debated for hours. Some wanted to send their entire fleet to destroy the water farm and everyone on it. Others warned that this would only prove the human was worth fearing. A few suggested negotiation, but they were shouted down. The Iron Tide did not negotiate. In the end, they chose caution. They sent scouts to watch the water farm from a distance, to learn more about this human who had done the impossible. They needed information before they acted. The scouts arrived at 2 weeks after the battle. They expected to find a ruin. Instead, they found something that made their blood run cold. The water farm had been rebuilt. The damage from the battle had been repaired. But that was not what frightened the scouts. What frightened them was what they saw outside the main gate. Sung was sitting on a metal crate, calmly cleaning a weapon. Around him, arranged in neat rows, were the weapons, armor, and insignia of every warrior he had killed. A trophy display. A warning. The scouts approached cautiously, their hands far from their weapons. Sung watched them come without moving. His face showed no emotion. "I was wondering when you would arrive," he said. "Your masters must be curious." The lead scout stopped several meters away. He was older than the warriors who had died here, wiser in the ways of survival. He recognized a dangerous man when he saw one. "We are not here to fight," he said carefully. "Only to observe, to report." "Good," Sung replied. "Then you can report exactly what I tell you." He stood up slowly, setting down his weapon. He walked toward the scouts, and they resisted the urge to step back. This close, they could see the scars on his hands, the calm certainty in his eyes, the way he moved like a predator who had nothing left to prove. "Tell your masters that this station and everyone on it are under my protection," Sung said. "Tell them that any hostile action against this place will be answered with force. I do not care how many they send. I will kill them all." The lead scout nodded slowly. "Is that all?" "No," Sung's voice dropped, becoming something quiet and terrible. "Tell them this as well. The woman and her child are my family now. If anything happens to them anywhere in the galaxy, I will hold the Iron Tide responsible. I will hunt your organization to the end of space and time. Every base, every ship, every leader. I will not stop until there is nothing left." He leaned closer. "I have friends, other humans who feel the way I do, soldiers like me. We are scattered across the galaxy, but we remember our training. We remember our purpose. Cross me, and you will discover what happens when you awaken a sleeping giant." The lead scout felt ice forming in his stomach. He had heard stories about human soldiers, about their impossible endurance, their refusal to surrender, their terrifying loyalty to those they considered their own. He had always thought the stories were exaggerated. Now he was not so sure. "I will deliver your message," he said. "See that you do." The scouts left. They did not look back. Time passed. The Iron Tide did not return to 7. The warlords had decided that the water farm was not worth the cost. Let the human have his little patch of desert. There were easier targets elsewhere. But the story continued to spread, and with it came others who had been touched by the Iron Tide's cruelty. A family of refugees arrived at the water farm 3 months after the battle. They were a species of small, gray-skinned creatures who had been enslaved by the Iron Tide for generations. They had escaped during a transport accident and wandered the desert for days before finding Sung's station. He took them in without question. More came after that. A wounded pilot whose ship had been raided, a group of children whose colony had been destroyed, an old scholar who had watched his entire species be scattered to the stars. They all found their way to the water farm, drawn by the story of the human who had stood against the Iron Tide. Sung did not turn anyone away. Helped him manage the growing settlement. Her ability to sense underground water made the farm thrive, producing enough to support dozens of people. She organized the refugees, taught the children, and became something like a leader among them. Little grew up surrounded by friends from a dozen different species. She learned their languages, their customs, their stories. She laughed and played and lived without fear, which was the greatest gift Sung could imagine giving her. One evening, found Sung sitting alone on the ridge above the settlement, watching the twin suns set over the red desert. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, beautiful and endless. She sat down beside him without speaking. They had grown comfortable with silence over the months. Some things did not need words. "You could have stayed hidden," finally said. "You could have lived peacefully for the rest of your life. Why did you risk everything for strangers?" Sung considered the question. He had asked himself the same thing many times. Why had he opened that gate? Why had he not turned away like he had so many times before? "When I was young," he said slowly, "I believed that being strong meant being able to hurt people, to fight, to kill. I was very good at it, maybe too good. It ate away at me bit by bit until I did not recognize myself anymore." He paused, watching the light fade over the desert. "I came here to escape that, to become someone different, someone peaceful. But I was wrong about what peace meant. It is not about avoiding conflict. It is about knowing what you are willing to fight for." He looked at her silver eyes that held no judgment, only understanding. "My people have a saying. We believe that protecting the innocent is not just a choice. It is what makes us human. Without that, we are just animals with weapons. I forgot that for a while, and helped me remember." Was quiet for a moment, then she reached out and took his hand. "Then perhaps," she said softly, "humans are exactly what this galaxy needs." Far away, in the heart of Iron Tide territory, the warlords studied their reports with growing unease. The human farmer had become a symbol, a beacon. Escaped slaves whispered his name like a prayer. Oppressed colonies spoke of resistance for the first time in generations. The warlords had heard stories about humanity before, about their stubbornness, their adaptability, their capacity for both great kindness and terrible violence. They had dismissed these stories as exaggeration, as propaganda, as the frightened tales of weaker species. Now they knew better. Humanity was young. Humanity was small. Humanity had been in the galaxy for barely a century while other species had ruled for. But humanity was not afraid, and that made all the difference. On 7, the twin suns finally set, painting the sky in deep red and gold. The water farm settled into peaceful darkness. Children slept in beds made of recycled metal. Refugees dreamed of better days. And in a small room carved into the cliff, a little blue-skinned girl dreamed of oceans she had never seen. Sung walked through the settlement one final time before resting. He checked the defenses, the water collectors, the sleeping quarters. Everything was quiet. Everything was safe. At the door to his own room, he paused. He looked back at the settlement he had built, at the family he had found, at the purpose that had finally given his life meaning. He was not just a farmer anymore, not just a soldier. He was something new, something the galaxy had not seen before. He was human, and he would protect what he loved until his very last breath. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in their endless dance. Somewhere among them, the iron tide plotted and schemed and prepared for futures they could not control. And somewhere among them, other humans like Sung waited, scattered across 1,000 worlds, ready to answer the call when it came. The galaxy was vast and cruel and beautiful, but it was changing, slowly, one act of defiance at a time, one family at a time, one human at a time. And for the first time in a very long while, the darkness had reason to be afraid.